That was the Tana Quartet. For over a decade, the French string quartet has been pushing boundaries and reinventing the link between past and future over a dozen albums. Well regarded in the world of contemporary music, the Tana Quartet has worked with composers from around the world and performed in prestigious venues such as the Paris Philharmonic and the Villa Médicis in Rome. These trailblazing pioneers are releasing a new album, King Lear by Philip Glass, string quartet number 9. And to find out more about it, I'm joined by viola player Julie Michael. Thank you so much for being with us today. This is your third season with the quartet. Before we talk about your new album, can you tell us a little bit more about the origin of this Tana string quartet and where your name comes from?
Sure. So the Tana Quartet has been playing together for 11 years now. And we perform a variety of styles of music. We try to appeal to as wide a variety of listeners as possible by playing music from brand new music from today, as well as older music, Beethoven, Bartok. And the name actually goes back to a trip at the very beginning of the quartet's existence, a trip to Madagascar to perform for children there. And the capital of Madagascar, Antananarivo, is understandably known by its nickname Tana, which is also a nice symbol for the quartet with its 4 letters. 2 A's are like the 2 violins. And we found out over the years that it has a variety of different sort of serendipitous meanings in other languages, that in Sanskrit, for example, it means to play together. So we liked that that coincidence too.
Yes, the planets aligned with that name. It's a beautiful name. So you play alongside the brother-sister team Antoine and Jeanne Maison-Haute on the first violin and the cello, as well as the second violinist Ivan Lebrun. What is the advantage of a string quartet over other classical music formations? It must require an incredible synergy and communication between the different people in it.
Absolutely. Because there's no conductor in a string quartet, we have to be very tightly connected visually as well as in terms of listening. And it's a formation that's existed since the 1700s, and the repertoire is extremely well developed, so we have a lot to choose from when it comes to choosing pieces that we want to share with audiences.
Well, let's listen to you guys in action. Here's a clip from your new album. It's called King Lear by Philip Glass String Quartet number 9. Take a listen. So that was an extract off the latest album by the Tana Quartet. It's called the String Quartet number 9. That piece was actually originally written by the American composer Philip Glass for a Broadway performance of King Lear by William Shakespeare. What drew you to that particular piece and made you want to record it?
Well, our collaboration with Philip Glass goes back quite a few years now. We released his first 7 string quartets 5 years ago, which at the time, those were his complete string quartets. He's since written an 8th and now this brand new 9th. So when we released that album just recently on streaming, we found out about this King Lear quartet that he had written for Broadway, and it piqued our interest. So this new version is a concert version. The older version was written, of course, as incidental music to the play. So this version is written to stand alone on stage as a cohesive musical narrative. And I'm not a huge Shakespeare buff, but I do love the way that this quartet tells the tragedy of King Lear. It really, as you can hear in that excerpt, that's from the end, and it's just depicting the storm scene that's so turbulent.
And so for people who don't know Philip Glass, he is one of the most famous contemporary composers. And as you said, you've already collaborated with him in the past. What do you find so attractive to his musical universe?
Oh, it's so unique. As you mentioned, he's a huge figure in today's music, and he's he's very well loved, especially in the US, but he's coming to be more well known in Europe as well. And he just has such a unique voice. He's the father of what's known as minimalism, also known as repetitive music, or music with repetitive structures, where he'll take a small unit of music and repeat it, and have it undergo rhythmic changes and harmonic changes. And it's a really unique musical style that's been so influential in film music and influenced so many other composers.
And so as a string quartet, you are on the one hand attached to kind of traditions and this very classical formation you were telling us about, but as a group, you're also eager to push boundaries and to go into more contemporary creation. Is it hard to stay modern as perhaps a classical formation? Is that a hard thing to do?
It can be hard because today's music is so varied. I mean, there's just so many different voices coming out of different conservatories today. So it can be hard to keep up with all those different voices, but it's really exciting to see what various emerging composers are doing. And it keeps us on our toes, certainly, in terms of staying up to date with, for instance, what different composers are doing with electronics. So it's very rewarding.
It sounds very exciting indeed to be exploring all those different channels in musical creation. We're going to stay with classical music with the Paris Philharmonic that's holding its string quartet biennale right now until January 23rd. The 2022 edition celebrates the 70th anniversary of the French composer Philippe Manoury. Instead of candles, his 4 quartet compositions will be showcased. We'll listen to a little clip from his string quartet number 3, Melancholia. Now, the Paris Philharmonic does tremendous work in trying to bring classical and contemporary music to a broader audience. And as a group, the Tana Quartet has also done this. You've worked with the French Ministry of Culture to bring your compositions to unusual places, like I might say, like supermarkets or retirement homes, hospitals. What inspired that move to kind of reach a broader audience?
Oh, that's so important to us. We're aware that classical music can be difficult to access for certain listeners, and we wanted to bridge that gap. So it's really important to us to do these performances, often in rural areas where people are farther from concert halls, and as you mentioned, in places that are rather unconventional. Just this past fall, we did some performances in retirement homes and community for people with disabilities, as well as a specialized school. And it's really for us to bring music to those audiences too.
It's such a great initiative to try and reach a broader audience like that. We're going to move on to some other music news with some releases. The Weeknd has dropped his 5th album. It's called Dawn FM, a surprise release that was announced by the Canadian pop star himself. The 16-track record has some strong references to Michael Jackson and Daft Punk, and some prestigious guest features as well: Quincy Jones, Tyler, the Creator, and Canadian actor Jim Carrey. It's a dance pop album, and it's certainly in line with his previous release, After Hours, that dropped at the beginning of the first COVID confinement in March 2020. Here's a track off the album, Take My Breath. It's a ray of sunshine. Take a listen. Finally, Band of Horses are back on the saddle after nearly 5 years of discographic silence. The American band are dropping Things Are Great, a sixth album that brings them back to their original rough sound. And we're going to leave you with a track off that album. But before we go, I want to thank my guest, Julie Michael from the Tana Quartet. Thank you so much for being with us today on France 24. Be sure to check out their new album. It's called King Lear by Philip Glass, String Quartet number 9. For more arts and culture news, head to our website and stay in touch on social media. Stay tuned to France 24. More news is coming up right after this song, Crutch by Band of Horses.